So one of the things I often find leaders really struggle with is delivering feedback well. So what I want to share with you in this video is some of the most important things you can do to make sure that the feedback you're delivering is constructive and ultimately helping you to achieve your objectives. This is all about learning to deliver the truth with respect and sensitivity. So we want to make sure that we're absolutely being upfront, we're being real with people, that we're not watering down the feedback. A really common mistake leaders make is tiptoeing around the truth or watering it down because we're concerned about the emotional impact on the other person. It absolutely does matter that the way in which you engage is most likely to help that person to feel safe and to hear the feedback so they can actually take it on board. So we want to get to a place we've got a healthy balance between the person feeling supported, feeling treated respectfully, but at the same time, absolutely hearing the truth. So our primary objectives as a starting point is to make sure that we're nurturing the individual's self-esteem. If this is all about helping them to improve or to avoid a particular approach into the future, their confidence, their hopefulness in the future and the fact that they can be successful is going to matter. So we never want to be delivering feedback in ways that make people feel threatened or intimidated, because clearly that's not going to help them to, again, have that confidence and be able to try new approaches or to ultimately improve. This is also about making sure that we are engaging in dialogue or conversation with the person. It shouldn't just be a one-way street, because it's critical to ownership that we are exploring with that person their understanding of the circumstances, what was going through their mind, what are some of the solutions for next time. In other words, what are some of the alternative approaches that they can take? Then it's all ultimately about making sure that we have clarity. So again, another common mistake is making vague statements that are difficult for the person to really understand. So again, we want them feeling engaged, confident, safe, but also super clear on what's gone wrong or what is that alternative approach that we need into the future. And then it's about making sure that we're influencing their open-mindedness, their receptivity to the feedback, because ultimately we want them to own it. We don't want them to walk out of the room or walk away from the conversation rolling their eyes, and being dismissive in what they've heard. We want them to go and do things that are different. So it's critically important that you work to depersonalize the feedback. So this is about making sure that we're talking about the situation or a specific behavior or mindset that you've observed them bring to a scenario, as opposed to a personal criticism of them or their character. So an example of this might include, instead of saying you're always late to meetings, we depersonalize that by focusing on the meetings themselves have been starting late recently. How can we make sure that we're avoiding that moving forward? The first example there is more likely to leave the person feeling personally criticised or under attack, whereas when we depersonalise it to talk about the lateness of the meeting, again, we're being clear that that's not acceptable that we're starting late, but we're less likely, again, to trigger that person to feel confronted or attacked. So one of the models you can use to make sure that you're doing this well is the SBIBI model. So this is all about making sure we're giving someone enough insight so they can actually understand not only what has happened, but also what was the impact, what is the consequence, what is the importance behind the feedback that you're actually giving them. So as a starting point, we want to give them that context. So what was the actual situation? So you might say, for example, during yesterday's team meeting, so again, they understand where were we? When Mary was doing her presentation, I observed X, Y, Z. So again, giving them enough context so they can take their mind back into that scenario. Then it's about talking about the specific behaviour that you observed. So what was it in their approach that was less than effective, that you're obviously giving them feedback around? Then it's about understanding what was the impact. So why did that actually matter? So during that meeting, when Mary was doing her presentation, I observed that your body language indicated that you were quite annoyed, or you appeared to be disagreeing quite strongly with what she was saying, as an example. And then it's about talking about with that person whether or not they have any reflections around this. So do they recall that interaction? Do they agree with your observation that, their body language was giving off those indications? Is your interpretation that they were irritated or whatever it is that you observed, did they actually agree that that was what was going on in their mind? This is important again so that they are able to influence your understanding. So in that example, they might say to you, no, I wasn't irritated at all. And then what you can be talking about is, it is important, if that's not how you were feeling, it is important that you are mindful of the signals that you're actually sending, because then what we're talking about is, why did that matter? What was the impact on Mary? So you might say, for example, my observation is, Mary then started to lose confidence. She was very hesitant in her presentation. It's important that we're treating our colleagues respectfully, enabling them to be successful by creating an environment where someone like Mary, or in Mary's position, can feel comfortable just to deliver what she needs to without feeling that sense of disapproval in the room. And then it's all about, what is the alternative behaviour? So we've explained, here's the situation, this is the setting that we were in. We've described what was the behaviour or the mindset that you've observed. We've talked about why that matters, what was the impact, and then we're making suggestions around a different approach the next time that person is in that particular scenario or situation. And then ultimately, what is the likely impact? If they do adopt that different approach, what's going to be ultimately different? So again, this model can be applied for all sorts of different scenarios and different feedback. Again, the whole objective is to make sure we're getting to a point of clarity and we're being specific and we're depersonalising the feedback, but that we're also inspiring or influencing that sense of engagement, ownership, because we're engaging in a conversation as opposed to just delivering our point of view. So what I want you to absolutely, whenever you are giving feedback to people, is to proactively inspire or influence or promote that self-reflection. So this is an important strategy for building people's self-awareness and allowing, as a consequence of that, for them to get to a place of self-mastery where they're more able to self-manage. So, over time, reducing the need for you to be giving this type of feedback, because they are reflecting on their own mindsets and behaviours and approaches, and then ultimately the impact that they're having on their own success, but then the success of the team or the people around them, and of course your team culture. So, again, encouraging open dialogue. This shouldn't just be a one-way deliver bad news or tell somebody off or reprimand them. This is all about how can we influence them to reflect, discuss, come up with their own alternative behaviours or approaches or solutions. Again, to underscore all of that, because we want people to own it. So in terms of some actions you can take is, remember what is it that you are ultimately striving to achieve. So keep the end in mind. As I said at the start of the video, we want to help this person to be successful. Use the model that I've just shared to make sure that you're breaking it right down. I encourage you to always have a call to action. So what is this person going to do next? What is the commitment that they're going to sign up for? So obviously the example I've shared with you is a meeting scenario. So that might be around, okay, the next time we're in team meetings, how are you going to now approach this? The more we can get people to say out loud what their commitment is, the more likely they are to remember it and then ultimately hold themselves accountable. It is important that we offer people support. If you have any questions, if there's anything else I can do to help you to keep improving in this area, please come and see me. Might be the example there. And then, if this is part of a broader performance improvement requirement, again, in the interest of clarity and anchoring everyone's focus to that, then, putting some specific goals in place is an important step. So obviously the SMART methodology, where we're making sure that we've got really specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, time-bound objectives in place can make a positive difference. And then in many scenarios, it's going to be appropriate for you to then follow up with the person. So in the example I gave, you may not need to, unless, of course, the behaviours repeat again in the next meeting. But for a broader performance improvement scenario, it's going to be important you're following up, checking in with that person to see how they're travelling. So your feedback in many circumstances won't be just a once-off set and forget scenario. So thank you for joining me for this video. If you would like to learn more about this, you can tap into our e-learning resources. We have a course on how you can deliver feedback well. That is part of our Managed Performance series. See you in our next video.